welcome back to Away We Go. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Andrew.
And we are back with another roundup of country number 7. We went to Croatia as country number 7. We did 3 weeks.
Just over 2 weeks. It was supposed to be closer to 3 weeks, but if you watched our last video, we had some delays in Italy leaving, so it ended up only being 16 days altogether in Croatia. We did about 3 or 4 of them in Split, and then we did the rest about a little under 2 weeks in Zagreb.
Let's go over everything that we did, spent, ate,
Enjoyed.
loved. Andrew, you want to kick us off with some numbers?
Sure thing. So Europe has been much more expensive than South America. That being said, Croatia has been our cheapest European country so far. In Spain, we came in at about $212 a day. In Italy, that number was $293, possibly lower. We're still waiting on reimbursement from EasyJet. But Croatia comes in at $207. So it's still over that $200 mark. Which the average for South America was in like the 150, so still a bit higher, but much more cheaper than especially Italy in that case. In terms of, I guess, where that amount really comes from, our food costs were about the same, meaning we ate like normal people, but our accommodation was almost half the price of that of Italy. We stayed in one spot for a few days in Split, and then we stayed in another spot for almost, like I said, a full 2 weeks. So that definitely saved there. We also kind of didn't stay directly in the main square for the most part, so that definitely helped out. And in terms of flights, the flights were actually pretty cheap. They're about $200 to Split from Milan, and then another $200 from Split to Zagreb, and that's both with luggage. So all in all, it's about $400 in flights. In terms of activities, one of the, I guess, the beauties of Zagreb and Split for that reason is their natural beauties. So we didn't actually spend a lot on external activities. A lot of it was spent kind of sightseeing, but we were able to do that on our own. So all in all, we spent just under $400, about $384 on activities. So of the 384, the most expensive one was the Sunset Cruise that we took. It just came in about 115, so about a quarter of the total price. We spent $73 doing an escape room, and that was the 70s in 70 minutes, which we loved. We did $65 in terms of a pub crawl, and that was just the price to get on the pub crawl, not any money spent during the pub crawl. Then we did a $50 walking tour of Split. We did a $34 Game of Thrones museum, which was very interesting. $23, we went to the movies to watch Furiosa. And then rounding down the bottom, $12 at the zoo, which was our cheapest zoo yet, and we'll talk about that in a second. $9 to see a crypt. Rounding down the zero side was just going to some of the beaches and waterways. Everything else kind of came in pretty normal. I will say transportation costs were back to normal. Italy, we spent quite a bit because we ferried a lot and we took buses and stuff like that. Croatia, we stayed pretty close by, so we didn't end up having to spend all that much on, Ubers or taxis and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think we only took like 2 Ubers. We took the bus a couple times. So.
Oh, that's right. And a lot of the buses were like, what?
60 cents or 80
yeah,
cents.
it was less than $1. So all in all, really good. The cost for those 2 weeks definitely helped to reduce the overall rate of this daily trip.
That.
Yeah, so Croatia did exactly as we had hoped for, which was a relaxing break after having done Italy and Spain with family and friends and also spending a lot more money. It was a good relaxing one. With that being covered, Kayla, do you want to talk us through the accommodation?
So we stayed at 2 accommodations, and both of them were booked through Airbnb. The first one was a relatively small space. We were in Split, and Split is noticeably more expensive than Zagreb, and the reason for that being is because it has boomed in tourism over the last couple of years. It's right on the water. It's absolutely beautiful. It's got a beautiful old town. It's got a lot of things to do, and it's got a really big party culture. So the price for that one was a little bit more expensive, and therefore we had a smaller space to accommodate that. We had a bachelor apartment, so the bed, the kitchen table, and the kitchen appliances were right all in the
one
same space.
Yeah.
We had a tiny little bathroom, and that was it.
We were only meant to be there for 4 days, and that got cut down to 3 days.
Yeah. We missed out on one of the accommodations that we had booked, which we were really excited for, which was a free night that we were going to use with our Marriott. Luckily, we got the free night back, so we'll use it in another place. But we were supposed to stay at one of the tallest hotels in the city.
It was the AC Hotel, in Split.
And it was supposed to have beautiful views, so we missed out on that. Unfortunate because of the whole plane Milan thing. We were happy with our accommodation. The host was really, really nice. It was just like a no frills place, which was great, and it was also like 5 minutes walking from a lot of different places. I think it was a little farther away from Old Town. I think it was 10 minutes, but it was 5 minutes from a grocery store, 5 minutes from like a coffee shop. And the beach was like 10 minutes away. Really, you couldn't ask for more. It was absolutely fabulous. Loved it.
Yeah, and it was quiet enough that we didn't feel like we were in like the party area. Like we still were able to get sleep. I was able to do work, so
we also had incredible hosts. They were super, super friendly. One of the hosts met us the day that we checked in. He gave us hints on how to choose the best fish and how to handle prices for taxis.
Just giving us advice on like what to look for, what not to look for.
They also gave us some homemade moonshine. I can't remember what they call it in Croatia.
Yeah. He kept referencing it to it being like moonshine.
But it was walnut, super good. Anyways, we were really appreciative of that. And the second place that we stayed in Zagreb was another apartment, but this one was actually much bigger. So it was a 1-bedroom apartment. We had a full space where Andrew could hang out and do his work. There was a kitchen table. It was a fully stocked kitchen. They left us a lot of ingredients, so we had a lot of the basics like pasta and rice, which we were able to use, as well as some spices, which was really nice. We ended up leaving some of our stuff there in return. They also had a full bathroom, washer, dryer, so we were able to do laundry at this apartment. And overall it was a really good stay for 2 weeks. It was exactly what we needed for a long-term stay, and that's kind of what we look for. A bigger space if we're going to be there longer. If we haven't done laundry in a while, we're looking for laundry. And a separated space. Kind of that was the downside with Split, is like if I woke up early, I was literally just at the chair next to the bed, so it was hard to do anything. Where here is like there's a separate bedroom. There's also a lounging space compared to the kitchen table space where I was working at. So a lot of good areas that you could use. And just for context as well, the Split one was about $100 a night, whereas the Zagreb one was maybe about $90-$95 a night. So all in all, compared to a lot of stuff in Europe, that's pretty good. Now's the time where we're going to share some of our opinions with you. If you're familiar with any of the other roundups, we usually like to go over things like our favorite date, our favorite place, our favorite food, and all that stuff. So let's start off with, Andrew, what was your favorite activity?
Favorite activity, I would say I really, really like the escape room. So I'm going to say the escape room. There's a lot of parts of the trip that I thoroughly enjoyed. I thought the walking tour and the host for the walking tour was actually really well done and very comedic, but very informative, and it was really helpful. I think the escape room I really like because we've tried a lot of escape rooms around the world, and some of them have some interesting nuances to them, and some of them are really simple. This one had done some stuff that I've never seen before in an escape room that I thoroughly enjoyed doing.
One of the things that this escape room really touted was the fact that they were kind of like an immersive, not quite a museum, but they had a lot of artifacts from the 70s. So the room that we did was called Escape U. Exit U, which in brackets is EXU, like ex-Yugoslavia. And so it took place in the 70s, and you're in this person's house and you're trying to get back to your timeline. But they had a lot of things, appliances, tables, clothing, dishes that were all from the 70s in that part of the world, and that was really cool to see.
What about you?
I think as far as my favorite experience goes, I think I would have to say I really loved the sunset cruise, and I kind of pushed for this because Split had an absolutely beautiful waterfront, and I said it would be such a shame if we didn't take advantage of that. So we did this little sunset cruise, and it included a boat ride on a speedboat, and they said it's more leisurely. They ended up showing us a lot of cool spaces along the waterfront, as well as like where some of their ex-leaders lived, some of the history of the area. And then once we got to where we were sitting, the boat sat there for about an hour.
Yeah.
We had unlimited wine and beer, and we were able to get out and swim.
Yeah.
The water was absolutely gorgeous.
The views were beautiful.
The views were beautiful. Yeah, I thought it was just really nice.
Kayla, what was your favorite food or drink that you got to experience or try in Croatia that you really liked?
It was a squid and risotto with cuttlefish in it, and I had never tried cuttlefish before. The cuttlefish was extremely tender, super, super good. The only thing that I would say is that do not eat this on a first date, because I smiled at Andrew at one point and my entire mouth was black.
Yeah, it's funny because a few days after that, the tour guide was like, you got to try this, but don't then go take photos or anything like that. And anyway, it was lovely food.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah.
What about you, Andrew? What was your favorite food?
Food was definitely the cevapi. So we had that our first night actually in Split. It's very similar to like a ground beef patty, but they do it in like a sausage almost. But it has a lot more seasoning and flavor, I find. So it came with like a pita and some sauce and a couple of other things. So it was kind of like make your own meal to some extent, but it was really good, really well seasoned, really well flavored. We also got to enjoy, I'm gonna butcher the name, Rakia, thank you. I was like, what letter is pronounced differently?
Which I think is what they made us at the the first Airbnb. I think that was Rakia, but he never actually used the word Rakia, so.
Yeah. It has a number of different flavors, and there's like one or two main brands based on what I've read and looked into that people have preferences on, but we went to a lot of bars that had them. They're sippable, but they're also good with like a mix or like a tonic or something like that. And we got to try quite a few of them. I don't know if I have a favorite one, but there was definitely a few of them that were like...
I really enjoyed Antique and soda.
Yes.
Antique on its own was great, but Antique with soda I found really good.
And what was the Antique flavoring, I guess? Was it...
I think it just had herbs. I think it said herbs.
Oh, that's right. It was more of an herbal drink in that case.
Yes,
but
it was kind of like a digestif. How about what was your favorite bar or pub that we went to?
I'm probably going to steal yours because I think you're going to probably say the same one, but it's the Jazz Bar.
Yeah.
Funny story, Kayla and I, one of our first nights in Split, we kind of wanted to, we were sightseeing, it was late at night, and we were like...
I think it was after our cruise, actually.
So we were like, let's go grab a drink, we want to keep having fun, we're enjoying ourselves. So I don't know if I think we just kind of wandered, and we found this bar, and we just saw, I think, in the window, and it's this really beautiful, kind of fun layout.
I found it on Google.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway.
We had gotten almost all the way home and then realized there were no real bars in our area, so we ended up walking back to it.
So we got inside, and it's this old writer's house. So the theme was kind of like books and libraries and stuff like that, but it was also a jazz bar, so there was a lot of jazz music playing. They didn't have any live music that night, but it was like two distinct spaces. One of them was a little bit more taverna style, and the other one was a little bit more of this like book library kind of vibe. And we stayed on the book library side, and we sat at the bar and got to meet some tourists, but we also got to meet the bartender and learn that a lot of the people there who work there are from Argentina, which was kind of fun because we had just been there. So it was kind of cool to learn a little bit about the history of it. They were super nice, and yeah. And then
got to use some of his Spanish.
Got to try the old Spanish. And then we returned the next day during the tour, and we didn't realize it, but then the guide was like, and this is an old writer's home, blah, blah, blah. And we were like... It
was like one of the most important houses in the old town.
And we also didn't realize it was in the old town within like the walls. And
we visited at night. And we weren't quite sure what was what.
And he was like, you should try it out. And we were like, we did yesterday. Holy shit. Like, it was kind of a weird coincidence. So I would say that was probably...
I agree. That was a good one. It was really fun. It was nice talking to other tourists, but I think my favorite thing was trying all the different types of rakia. We literally sat there looking at the bottles and said, this one, this one, this one. And we did sit at the bar too, which was really nice. We got to watch the bartender make her drinks. We got to know her a little bit. Yeah.
I will throw in a second contender. One thing that I do want to call out is that in Zagreb, there is like a walking street that has a lot of nice bars and pubs. So not calling out any of them in specific, because we only went there once, but I think in general it was a really cool experience. Part of me regrets that we went like at the end of it all, but I think it's a little touristy, but I think it's kind of cool. There's a lot of different types of pubs and bars and stuff.
A lot
of stuff going on, a lot of people watching, so I think that's kind of another contender for bars. Before we get to our last question, Kayla, any favorite memories or moment, I guess, if you will, that you would pull out of our Croatia trip?
It's weird. I feel like I have a lot, and this isn't necessarily a favorite, but it's just a memory, and it was doing the pub crawl. And the main reason being is that I really wanted to meet people, and traveling as a couple can be really lonely sometimes. We get to talk to each other all the time, but I feel like people are a little bit more intimidated to come and talk to us.
Just because you're talking to two people, not one.
And so we went on this bar crawl to meet people, and then people automatically see we're a couple. Also, we were significantly older than a lot of people on this bar crawl. And so it was just a little like no one would really talk to us. But we did get to go to some really cool clubs and some really cool places that we wouldn't have gone to otherwise.
We did end up eventually talking and meeting with a lot of people, which was super fun. We got to learn a lot about some of the travelers who were there. Some of them were local. Literally, they just kind of wanted to do the pub crawl because it was a way to meet people. It was a way to get out. Some of them were traveling to Zagreb, but were maybe from other parts of Croatia. I think to me, it was like more of a comedy of errors, that place. Like, there's a lot of things that happened that night that I was like, oh, it was weird, or oh, right, that happened.
Also, one of the things that is really interesting about Croatia and that we didn't know before we went is that they allow smoking indoors as long as you have the proper ventilation and things like that. In my opinion, a lot of places that did have smoking indoors didn't actually have proper ventilation because I was dying by the end of the night. My eyes were so red, so puffy. I just was like crying basically, and it made it made some of them really unenjoyable for me personally. But
I think there's also like the reality is that we're used to a very different smoking culture that has kind of I don't know, I feel like has evolved in North America to some extent. There's a little bit more vaping, there's less smoking indoors, period.
There's no smoking indoors.
Yeah, I meant like there are in private places, but it's just smoking is not seen as I remember it being in like the 90s and early 2000s. I would say even just the 90s. But it feels like in a lot of places, especially at the time in Croatia, it was just kind of like everyone smoked. And I don't know if that's a European thing across the board, or if it's a Croatian thing, or if it's a tourist thing.
Once you get drunk, you start smoking more.
Yeah, but it was like definitely like you would go to a lot of bars and you'd be like, oh, this is a very, you'd have a lot of
I can do one drink here, that's pretty much it.
So, anyway.
But yeah, that was my memory. What about you, Andrew?
I think for me, it was the beach in Split. The beach in Split that we got to go to was beautiful and probably one of my favorite beaches, hands down. And the reason I say that is because part of the beach, a good section of the beach, is actually almost like a cement dock. There is a sandy part if you are someone who prefers that, but then there's a lot of people who just kind of hung out on this kind of like cement area, and it wasn't hot. That was the nice thing. It was a light color, so it didn't get hot as the sun got hotter. But personally, someone I love going to the beach. I just hate the sand aspect of it. Just something, growing up in PEI.
Insert the meme of Anakin Skywalker. I hate sand.
But it's true. So this to me was perfect, and the water was immaculate. Also, the beach, it's like the water itself was on like compacted sand, so there were no rocks or very few rocks. I looked at it and I looked at the photos and videos, and I was like, this was like the perfect beach. We only got
to experience it once, too, which kind of sucks.
The only downside is that it was a little bit tourist heavy, but I am, there's part of me that I'm like, I wonder what this would have been like in spring or summer prior to the big tourist boom, or if that's just always the case. So, Kayla, the last question is, how do we score it out of 10?
I really, really liked Croatia. It's definitely on my return list. I think that I would have to give it a 8.
Okay.
What about you?
I struggled with this one. If I had just done Split, I think I might have given it a 9 or even a 9.5 because I found like being in Split, I was like, this is exactly what I want. I think the only downside I had in Split, other than being like very touristy and maybe a little bit more expensive, was just the language is a lot more challenging. That's not fault of anyone but my own, but I feel like in other parts of Europe that, maybe are Spanish or kind of in the romance languages, it's a little bit easier to understand and figure out. But we're experiencing that now in Greece too, where I'm like, this is a little bit harder to comprehend. And then when we went to Zagreb, still beautiful, but Split just had so much more of it. So I think I'm still gonna give it a 9.
Oh, wow.
Which is still very high, and I definitely would go back. I feel like I would probably spend more of that time in places like Split, and I would probably want to check out Dubrovnik. I've heard really good things, and I've seen really good things.
I really want to check out Pula.
Yeah, so there's a lot in that area. I think I would certainly go back to Zagreb, but again, having spent 2 weeks there, I would almost go there just to live and just to be there's nothing to see.
People who work and travel, that's a great that's a great place to do it.
Yeah. Anyway, I loved Croatia. We're definitely going to go back at some point and do a lot more of any of the parts of it. Mm-hmm. So onwards and upwards.
Yeah.
All right. But thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
If you haven't checked out any of our other videos, how dare you? Please do so. We are going around the world in a year, and we're almost halfway there. So follow along, get caught up, and get excited as we keep hitting up new countries.
Yeah, and don't forget to join us next week when we start country number 8, which is Greece. There's a lot of fun stuff going on in Greece. So.
I guess the world had a pretty big deal in the history over here. So come check it out.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.